Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 4 live stream for the Open Championship. Gonna break down what to expect from the golf course tomorrow, as well as how to attack things from the DFS and prop side of things to go out there and have yourself a Sunday. First off, this week has been fantastic so far. 2 showdown slates that we've been well into the positive, both because of a little weather edge that we took advantage of. And on the prop side of things, it's been 3 straight profitable days. So hopefully we can make it a 4 for 4, end the week strong out there for showdown. And you guys are ready to get on after it. But first off, welcome on in. We got Antonio down there, MetroCon. Hopefully you guys are having a fantastic Saturday. We're going to talk about the weather for sure, Michael. You know the deal. You're a regular around here. What's going on, Kevin, Sites, Steven, and Nick? Hopefully you guys are having a fantastic evening and are ready to get after it. So started off with a look at our presenting sponsor of the live stream, which of course are our friends over there at the Ship It Nation. They are your source for all your needs on DFS, not just PGA like we talk about here, but for a variety of different sports, just like the sport that I'm sweating out there tonight. So we've got some UFC fights on. I'm sure a lot of you down there in live chat are probably keeping a side eye on that as well. So going to keep this stream a little bit more concise because I'm heading over to a friend to go over and sweat out these fights. But all of my content, all of the stuff that I used to go out there and build my lineups was built using the Ship It Nation. Over there, they have a dedicated team of proven winners that are going out there giving you guys content like you see here on my videos, projections, modeling, all of that, but are also very process-oriented over there. They are very in line with what I like to do out here in the videos, which is teach you how to fish opposed to just going out there and giving you a meal for a day. So if you like that kind of process, you want to move on to other sports outside of golf, the Ship It Nation are the guys that I'd recommend. Of course, when you're signing up, use code Luke10 when you are, and you will get a discount off any of those memberships. But talking about golf over here on this live stream, let's talk about the conditions today, which I wasn't expecting a definitive wave edge, but I was certainly leaning towards the morning, guys. The reason for that, the possibility of rain in the afternoon. And though the winds kicked up a lot more than what I was expecting, I did think that the PM wave was at least going to play slightly harder. And in fact, right, with the rain and the wind that they got out there, it was nearly a 1.5 shot advantage. So it was rather significant out there from day to day. And for round 4, just a little bit of a spoiler alert, we aren't going to see that same kind of effect. So it was still okay to mix in some later starters today, right? If we sort this by ceiling round, you did have a lot of early guys that played well, but then you also had guys like Scotty that had a decent day. Obviously, Xander's -2 was rather helpful himself. A Billy Horschel round wouldn't have killed you for your showdown lineups. And even Russell Henley at a +2 had like a middle to maybe even a late tee time. It went out there and shot -5. So even if you didn't stack all those morning guys, you probably got away with it today. But the added bonus, right, you wanted to go after early players for that leverage. And then when they got the better side of the draw, that's why I ended up having such a good day. There were plenty of guys like Xander that I left out, players that I could have gone to in my lineups, but because I played the right side of the draw, it ended up working out well. So the reason why I point that out is just to continually show you guys examples how even the smallest weather edge can lead you to a profitable day. Like you can go out there, pick the wrong studs, but if you pick the right side of the draw for 65, 70% of your player pool, you're going to go out there and be profitable. Sometimes it's just that easy, and it has been for rounds 2 through 4. Now with the placement points in play, it's going to be a slightly different dynamic out there for Sunday, but the weather looks pretty flat, all things considered. We got the UKV model up here, and you'll see that pretty much from 6 a.m. until they're going to finish play around 4 or 5. Actually, they'll probably finish around like 6, 7 p.m. local time over there. There's going to be a lot of wind in play. And it's that similar direction to what we had days 1 and 2, maybe a little bit more easterly. I guess it's a westerly wind, right? Going a little bit more towards the east than what we had for days 1 and 2. But it looks pretty gnarly out there. No rain like we had for this afternoon. But this golf course, even without that, as long as you have those 15 to 20 mile an hour winds, this place can turn into some carnage. So I think you're going to see this course probably play a whole 2 strokes over par. If not, with some difficult Sunday pin locations, a whole 2.5 strokes over par. And unlike rounds 2 through 3, I don't see a huge advantage towards taking some of the earlier or the later starters, which further complicates our matters out here for Sunday Showdown. Of course, with the placement points, we're going to have to prioritize some of the later starters anyways, but we can't only lean on those sort of players. We're going to have to try and find leverage somewhere. And a lot of times for Sunday Showdown, we like to see the morning guys getting the better side of conditions, because then it gives us incentive to go out there and mix in some early starters, right? Try and find some leverage, a ceiling round or two from somebody that's not going to be conservative. And we're not getting that kind of weather situation, right? It's the kind of situation where, if anything, I think the PM guys are getting the same kind of conditions as the morning, if not slightly better, because the winds do kind of die down at the end of play, and you also have higher temperatures. So it's a little bit awkward. You're still going to have to take some shots on some middle to early tee times, especially in those large field lotteries, right? If you're entering a contest with more than, let's say, 1,000 entries, and you're not mixing in somebody, maybe even 2 players that are starting towards the middle to early part of tee times, you're doing things wrong out there with your Sunday Showdown lineup. So we're going to talk through a lot of pivots when we talk about the DFS section, and not so much the chalk that I'm taking out there in my lineups, because with the fact that I think the weather favors the PM guys, you've got some studs up there like a Xander, a Scotty. You've got other guys up there like JT Morikawa in play. I mean, Shane Lowry at -1. Just pick your favorites, right? I mean, we'll talk about 1 or 2 of them, but your guys up top, your studs, you have your own process for that, right? If you're a big ball striking guy, you're probably playing a lot of Scotty Scheffler, because he's been by far the best ball striker over the first 3 rounds. If you're going with the hot hand, then maybe you take Xander Schauffele, right? After his really good round 3. Up top, these chalky guys, by the way, Scotty Scheffler going to be over 40% owned, maybe just under 40% when it comes to a projection. And then Xander Schauffele in that 30% range as well. So obviously, there are going to be some chalky guys that you have to take. And just because a Scotty or a Xander are 30% owned doesn't mean you have to avoid them in lineups. So obviously, if you want to see my full take out there for Sunday, you guys know where to find it, right? My Patreon page is going to have my entire player pool. But for the sake of the live stream, we're just going to focus on more of the pivots that I'm taking to give you an idea of where I'm getting different, because the studs, the placement points are real easy to pick, right? You're going to pick your stands, the guys that you think you're going to hold that top 5 position, or potentially go out there and even move into that top 5, right? Those are the stands you take at the top end of the board. I probably don't have to tell you who those kind of players are, right? You probably already have an idea. The harder part, because we don't have the weather edge, is going to be getting different, right? And that's going to be the idea of what we go through here. What's going on, Michael? Yeah, cheers to round 4. A little water here. Yeah, after my migraine, there's no alcohol in the system this weekend. I am absolutely keeping it clean. We're not risking a headache. Let's put it that way. What's going on, Brian DePeach? Cheers to you guys out there. Saturday, what do we do with Scotty, and can he just not putt on these greens? Yeah, we'll talk about Scotty, I guess. So I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing with him personally. I'm going to leave that behind the paywall. But Scotty, if you're a big ball striking guy, I mean, even if he goes out there and plays like he has the first 3 rounds, he's going to be live to win this golf tournament. I mean, he's top 10 after the first 3 days, hasn't even had a good round to this point, and he's 2 shots off the lead. So he's certainly in play, even if he doesn't find that flat stick. And then the upside is infinite if he happens to go out there and gain. So I would say that it'd be really hard to avoid him if you're a big ball striking truther. And yeah, is it just going to stay like this forever? Probably not, right? He's going to figure it out at some point. Now, does that mean it's going to happen tomorrow? Absolutely not. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen 2 weeks from now for all we know. But in 2024, he's had it figured out a lot more than he hasn't. So I would say that he'd be hard to avoid. And I probably tipped my hand a little bit too much there. What stats are we looking at to find a boat racer? Approach stats, 100% approach stats. Off the tee matters. I've been looking at that for some of my modeling. But if you're looking towards the middle to bottom end of the board, a lot of the guys that we're going to talk about here are approach level players. What's going on? Brant said Master Luke down there in chat. What's going on? Hopefully you're having a fantastic evening. If there's any players you want my take on, just let me know down there in the live chat. But we're going to go through some of my favorites right now. So if you're looking to get different in the 10K range, maybe you're avoiding that chalk. Maybe you're doing a double spend up where you're taking a Xander or a Scotty, and then you're using a Shane Lowry as a second man in. If you get to Shane, especially as the double spend up, I think you're going to be extremely different right there. In fact, I think you're probably going to be in the subset of like 0.5, maybe even like 0.4, 0.3% of lineups that get to that kind of combination. It's usually tough, right, to take a 12K guy or even like an 11K guy and then go straight to $10,000 for your second man in. But because of how soft Showdown pricing can be, it's a lot more viable than it is on a main slate. So I kind of like the 6K range. There are a lot of pivots down low that I'm mixing in. And the added benefit of going a double spend up, if you choose, right, to take that direction, would be it forces you to get some differentiation. It forces you into the 6K range for 1, maybe even 2 players. And you've got a ton of sub 5% owned players down there. So A way to get different on this kind of slate would be to change it up with your lineup construction. And the kind of guy that I'll be doing that with at least a few times out there in my Sunday lineups is going to be with the Shane Lowry. So that's why I wanted to put him out. Obviously, he's still like 15% owned. So we shouldn't say that he's like a true leverage play, but it's how I'm using him, right? I'm not going to have a lot of lineups. I'll just say it now. I'm not starting any lineups with Shane Lowry. If I use him, it's going to be as a second man in. So it's a little bit of a special play for me, but I know that in that scenario where I'm going double spend up, that almost no one else is going to do that. In fact, it's pretty much going to be infinite leverage to the field. And if for some reason Shane Lowry makes a run at it and I get this guy up top right that maybe goes out there and wins between a Xander and a Scotty, well, that could be a really good spot to be in GPPs. Obviously, you still have 4 other spots to build with, but there are enough guys down towards the bottom end of the board that I think I can make it work in some builds. Moving on to our next option here on the live stream, it's going to be Joaquin Niemann at +5. Obviously, the placement points aren't nearly as big a factor here, but he might still get some top 10 placement, which honestly, not all that much different than what you get for like 20th through 25th. But I guess the birdie production is what we're looking for here. He's sub 10% owned. So if you're just looking for a pure ownership pivot, Joaquin Niemann could be your second man in. Let's say that you're using a chalky option up top. Maybe it is a Scotty or a Xander. And maybe you're even taking a chalky option like a Billy Ho, a Daniel Brown, a Justin Rose, maybe even a Russell Henley down here at $7,900. If you want to splurge on some chalk, right? You want to take chalk up top and a mid-level chalky option, you're going to have to offset that, right? And honestly, it's not just offsetting it with 2 guys down low. That's not going to be enough. You're going to have to find either a spend up or another mid-tier option for some mega leverage to go out there and make up for like 2 30% owned players. I guess just for some perspective out here, Billy Horschel, I've got at 40% ownership. So I believe the highest owned player on the slate. I've also got Daniel Brown at about 30%. So obviously, if you're taking that kind of player and a Xander or a Scotty up there, there's going to be consequences for that. The kind of player that I like to offset that kind of lineup construction would be a Joaquin Niemann. He's $8,900, one of the best birdie makers in all of the Live Tour, extremely aggressive player, also a low ball flight, which will help him out in some of the windy conditions, and just has played a lot better than the scorecard would indicate. He's had a lot of blow pulls. Look at hole number 11 today. Look at hole number 8 out there for round 2. If it weren't for that, he'd literally be up there in the lead. I mean, he'd quite literally be -4, -5, potentially even winning the golf tournament. But obviously, that's a huge asterisk, right? That's a huge what if out there with removing those 2 holes. In a showdown format, we don't worry about the blowups nearly as much. And while placement points are in play out there for Sunday, that's not really what we're going for with Niemann. We're hoping that he can make 5, 6, maybe even 7 birdies on the round, and that would be his way out there to the optimal. If you like yourself a chaser, somebody that can get themselves nuclear hot, well, obviously JT was able to do that for round 3, but I'll take him out there in round 4 because just like Joaquin Niemann, he has that same kind of ball flight. He's a very skilled, creative player when it comes to his shot making, a player that can change trajectories at will. And a lot of players in this field, frankly, in the world, can't do that, right? They're stock shot players. You hear about the TrackMan golfer these days, the prototypical type of golf we play in 2024, but Justin Thomas is a little bit of a throwback, a little bit of one of those old timer type of swings where he will go out there and hit very creative shots. I mean, 75%ers, 50%ers out there with wedges that are extremely useful when you get these windy conditions. So kind of like Joaquin Niemann, it's a little bit of a skill set play going out there and taking him. And at 15% ownership, he's not mega chalk down here. I mean, I've got Daniel Brown like twice the ownership. I've got guys like Adam Scott in that same sort of tier. I mean, even somebody like Russell Henley, I've got a solid 10% higher owned than Justin Thomas. And it's not like I'm fading all these guys. Out of Billy Ho, Daniel Brown, and Henley, I'll tell you that. And who else should I include in that? I'll include Sam Burns down here too. Down here at $7,200. Out of those 4, I'm playing at least one of them out there in my lineups for tomorrow. But I still think that JT has upside. I mean, at even par, he could go out there, shoot like 4 under, and potentially end up finishing in that top 3. So you've got placement point potential there. I think the ownership is reasonable enough to go out there and get over the field. Next up, we got DJ at $7,500. And I have to say, has looked a lot better here at the Open Championship, a major championship that he normally hasn't fared all that well at. So now that we've started to see some better form, I think that's a sign of better things to come. His ball striking stats have been in check this week. He's been keeping the ball on the planet, unlike what he did at the other majors. And $7,500 is a very fair price tag. At +2, he doesn't have a ton of potential to go out there and get placement points, but if he can go out there and muster up a -3, a -4 round, that could sneak him into that top 10 and maybe like a 7th or an 8th place finish. So I think it'll be tough out there. Grinding out a low score is going to go a long way. And the $7,500 price tag makes him a way to save some of that salary if you're going for a double spend up, right? I mean, normally like a guy like DJ, even Justin Thomas at $8,100, you're getting a premier level player that has placement point potential, and you're getting them for $500 to $1,000 cheaper than we probably should be. If you're going to go that Lowry double spend up with one of those two up top, these kind of guys can be your like 3rd, 4th man in and give you enough salary to work out there with your last few spots. Obviously, you're going to have to punt with maybe 2 6K options to make that work, but at least you're still getting decent 3rd, 4th man in if you're going with that. Next up, we got Mackenzie Hughes. He's +5. He had a horrible round 3, but he is gaining strokes on approach, which is very atypical for his stat profile, as normally he's a short game specialist. Around the green, huge gainer, and maybe the best putter on tour when he gets the flat stick working. And for whatever reason this week, it's been Bizarro World. It's been almost the exact opposite of what we're used to seeing for Mackenzie, which for Showdown is the kind of thing I look for in players. If they're going out there, they're having a really good week and one aspect of their game that maybe they're not great at, the idea is if they can continue that positive outlook and then just return to making putts like he normally would, he'd go out there and have a really good round. So that's the thought process with me getting to Mackenzie Hughes, is knowing that historically, right, he's playing a lot better than he normally would at this golf course. He's just got to start to make the putts, which inexplicably, right, need to go down. I mean, it makes no sense for Mackenzie Hughes to be going out there and not being a premier level putter. And at +5 and only 2% ownership, I think he's got some upside at that kind of score. The last 2 plays we're going to talk through, we got Benny Ann at +1. He's at 10%, so I wouldn't call him a low-owned play, but at 10%, he's got placement point potential at +1. What I like about Benny Ann is he's putting, so kind of like the Mackenzie Hughes thing where, he's gaining on approach and not putting. It's the exact opposite for Benny Ann. Benny Ann is gaining with the putter this week, but has been very mediocre to just above average out there with the irons. Long term, Benny Ann, one of the best iron players out there on the PGA Tour, usually cannot sniff a putt for his life. 1 second here, guys. Throat was getting a little scratchy. And as I was saying, it's the Bizarro World, right? He's going out there doing the opposite of what we'd expect. And if he can go out there, generate some birdie looks, and then convert on the putts like he has been all week, that could set up extremely well for Benny Ann. So 10%, I think he's got some placement point potential. Maybe not a super leveraged option that you can take down here in the 6K range, but if you can afford to take some ownership, has placement point potential and isn't nearly as chalky as some of the other guys, right? Like 10% doesn't look great. There are lower owned options that you could get to, but compared to a 30% owned Thurston Lawrence, right? I mean, obviously that's a much better number to get to and vice versa. There are other guys down here that are also pretty chalky. And then the last player we'll talk about here as a highlighted play is going to be Richard Mansell at $6,500. He's way back, obviously no placement point potential with this sort of play, but the approach stats have been really good for Richard Mansell, and the form heading in has been a little sneaky too. A few top 20s out there on the DP World Tour, and then at the Genesis Scottish Open, also had himself quite a solid week. So the kind of player that I think has been playing better golf recently than most would know. He's sub 2%, so essentially no one is getting there. And the approach stats, the ball striking is what we're looking for in a player down low. So like I said, if you're going to try and find some leverage, like a mid to early guy to go out there and boat race, you want to do it with a ball striker that's super low owned. And ideally, I mean, a $6,500 price tag also gives you a lot of flexibility with the rest of your lineup when it comes to your salary allocation. So that's what I'll say about the highlighted plays. We're going to catch up on all of your questions now. Like I said, we're going to keep this one moving because I'm getting over to a buddy's house for the UFC fights. But yeah, we'll talk about props afterwards. I've put in a lot of props already, so we're very prepared for that. So where are we at? Do I think Rye goes nuclear? Probably not, I would say. He's a little bit too far back, but he's in play. All of those sort of guys that have kind of just like sucked, that aren't going to be as interested for round 4, they have a really low floor. They could go out there, just, again, not show no interest out there in the round, eject a little bit, or if they start well, I mean, what's to stop them from going out there and continuing it, right? I mean, think about it yourself. If you're out there, you just had to show up to go out there and golf, you start pretty shitty, you're probably going to pack it in, right? Just like Rory McIlroy, you're probably going to start to think about maybe what you're having for dinner. On the flip side, though, you're Aaron Rai. I mean, you've had a bad week, but you're like -3 through 4. You're going to be enjoying that. You're going to be like, you know what? Just go out here and play some golf, right? And be pretty engaged with what you're doing. I wouldn't cross off the bottom end of the board. Like, I prefer some other guys, maybe guys that showed me a little bit more, but he's still in play. Like, if he's somebody that you were considering adding, I wouldn't talk you off of it, if that makes sense. The like button was smashed, Zach says. You heard the guy. Go out there, do it a favor yourself. Go out there, smash it, and help get this out there to even more people. 150 maxing, what is the least percentage I put on a low-owned pivot? About 7%, Nick. That's a great question. 7% is normally my cutoff. 5% if it's like a guy I just want a little nibble of. Like, maybe it's like a 0.5% owned player. Usually it's like 5 to 7%. And that's a great question, by the way, when it comes to process. And that's usually what I'm around. A lot of times I'm at 10% on pivots, maybe even like 12.5 to 15, but at the very least around 7. Do I look at approach for the event or latest round? Both matter. One will give you the trajectory, right? Round 3 will give you their trajectory. The full event gives you a better idea of what they've done for the entire event, bigger sample size. So I would say that the full event stuff is a little bit more impactful for me, but I definitely look at the trajectory stuff as well. Ideally, you want solid shots gained metrics all week and then a pretty good round 3 too. If you can get both, that's the ideal scenario to Peach. Low-key impressed with DJ showing up. I think he can continue it. Is that guaranteed? Absolutely not. He's definitely had sketchy form, so I think there's an avenue for him to fail, but low ownership, he's impressed me as well. I'm going to be there too. Is there a place to track total birdies? Yes. On ESPN, they have all of them hole by hole, and then on Data Golf, they'll give you the percentages. So there's not like a running counter or anything like that, but you can easily add them up on any of those kind of sites. What's going on, Antonio? What are my thoughts on Rai versus Ricky? I like that. Now, the -190 juice is, I mean, a lot, but I definitely like the Aaron Rai side of that. Ricky Fowler, especially when he's kind of out of it, can really pack it in. I mean, the guy bitch quits more than anyone else out there in tour. So, yeah, I tend to think that Ricky is probably going to struggle out there tomorrow. But -190 juice is kind of crazy. So I don't know if I would bet that, to be honest, but I do agree that Rai should be the favorite. How about a Connors for a bounce back? Today really seemed like an outlier. Yeah, today was an outlier. I mean, anyone that shot way over par today, excusable given some of the conditions. Could he bounce back? For sure. Round 3 stats weren't all that great, but still gaining shots on approach for the week, and is going to be super low owned after what he did today. So if you need a chaser, if you need somebody that's extremely low owned to get different, let's say you're starting with like a Xander or Scotty, maybe you're using one of those 25, 30%ers that's up there at -3. That kind of player will offset that for you, or at least help you get started on offsetting that ownership. Billy Ho under 72.5, I would not. We'll talk about props here in a little bit, but I've got a whole take on props for tomorrow. The way Billy Ho scrambled today and he had the glint in his eye, he may actually win. I'd like to see him win. I'll say that, Jeff. You're right, dude. He looked like a major champion out there today. I've got to say, Billy Ho, I'm like a roller coaster on whether I like him or not. There are certain times I love him. I love his moxie out there, like what we saw today. And then when I see him bitching, when I see him pouting out there in tour, that he's one of my least favorite players. So I got to say, he's one of the more polarizing guys on tour for me. I really don't know what to think about him. I've got to say, he scrambled his ass off today. You're 100% right. But they were miracle up and downs. They were, shots that he should not have pulled off. There were a lot of 10 to 15 footers that he was making that are going to be very, very hard to go out there and make on Sunday. So he gave himself a chance, but he cannot hit the ball like he did on round 3. If he hits the ball like he did out there for moving day, he's going to shoot like 4 or 5 over par, because I just can't see him going out there and doing that again. However, if he ball strikes the ball better, he actually keeps the ball in play, he could go out there and realistically win this. He's just going to have to, do that, right? He's going to have to go out there and actually hit the ball as opposed to kind of get away with it like he did today. Showdown cash core. I don't play cash, so I don't got a core for you. I'm not going to make one up either, right? I give you guys my actual exposure, and I'm not a big cash player, so I won't do that. Greatly appreciate your thoughts. What do I think about Rom and Cantlay? So Rom, Cantlay, both like medium owned. I've got both around like 10% ownership out there for round 4. So if you're looking to get a little different, like I'm doing with a Joaquin Niemann, they make sense for that. I've got to say Cantlay shots gain metrics are pretty average for the week. So I don't hate them or love them out there for Sunday. And the same thing with John Rahm. It's been, kind of a mediocre week for both players, but they're at the portion of the leaderboard, +2, +3 respectively, where they could move up into the placement points. They could top 10. They have a really good round. Maybe they top 7, they top 5, that kind of thing. They're in play. They're not my favorite plays, but they're in play. Any radiation in the forecast tomorrow? No. Wouldn't mind Billy Ho going nuclear. I see what you did there, though. Yeah, I got to say, dude, if in terms of my money, Scotty Scheffler winning would be great for me. I'd love to see that. Morikawa coming from the rafters would be even better, but that's a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. In terms of what I would like to see, I think Billy Ho winning might be number 1. But like I said, I'm so polarized on the guy. I'm not sure whether to love him or hate him. I guess we'll see after tomorrow. Tomorrow's probably going to have a big fixture in that. And hey, if he wins a major, I've got to say, I said at Pinehurst, by the way, guys, the last time we had a major championship, I said this is the kind of course that Billy Ho might win his first ever major. I didn't think it was going to be at this golf course. Definitely off the tee does not fit Billy Ho. So if he pulls it off, good for him. That'd be a hell of a major to have. He's an American. Americans win at Royal Troon, but he's not an American style golfer by any means. Off the tee, he looks like me and you out there. He's not a very good off the tee player. He's in fairways this week, though. I'll give him that. Do you think Koepka is completely out of play? No, he's not out of play. Just for evidence of that, I think I'm not sure if it was the PGA or the Masters. It was one of those two this year. He blew up. He was completely out of it on Sunday, and he shot -6. So I'm not sure if that was the Masters or if that was the PGA. It was one of the two. He went out there, boat raced on Sunday. He's not out of play. He's shown it before. As much as we like to criticize him for not caring, he clearly does. I mean, he just shot like -7 that round. So if he's done it there, he could do it again. You're eyeing Fitz for a dart throw. Is it worth it? So Fitzpatrick, he would be a real dart throw. I've got to say the shots gain metrics have kind of been all over the place. He hasn't really stood out in any one category. All 4 are pretty much right around neutral for Matty Fitz, which makes him extremely hard to read, right? He's not doing anything well this week. He's also not doing anything poorly. So because of that, right, he's at like a 5 out of 10, which makes him such a conundrum, right? Like he's low owned. I guess there's upside if he's at least keeping it together. But at the same time, he hasn't really shown us any breadcrumbs to make us like him out there for Sunday. So I'm at like a 5 out of 10, and I can't really lean either direction because we have no reason to. Kevin says, got Brit, Scotch, Irish, might be irate if Harm and Billy Ho go back-to-back. They would. Yeah, they wouldn't like that. But Royal Troon, that's kind of just what happens here. I can't even remember the last non-American winner. Actually, it was Henrik Stenson, I guess. But outside of Stenson, it's been a lot of Americans. Thoughts on Jason Day? Ball striking it better than you'd expect is what I'll say about J-Day so far. He's gaining on approach, just to give you an exact number, about a stroke and a half per round over his first 3 rounds. He's at T33, so you're not going to get elite level placement points. But if he shoots -3, -4, that could be a top 10. He's definitely in play. He wears the Malbon too, and I fuck with the Malbon clothes. What are my strokes gain strategy when I feel oh my gosh, okay. This guy's just getting banned. What the fuck? What kind of comment was that? I should have read it before I brought it up on screen, but they've got some real idiots down in chat. I guess that's what you get on the internet, right? You get all these fat trolls that sit behind their screens that have nothing better to do. Well, just enjoy the ban, man. I'm not going to stress about it, and you won't be getting any advice going forward. All right, let's talk about some of this prop stuff. So that's all I've got for DFS. Go ahead and smash that like button if you guys haven't already. And I've got quite a few hot takes out here for props. I've already entered like 6 slips, so we're definitely ready for this one. So strokes average today rate varied a ton depending on tee time. If you take a look at the round 3 stuff, morning rate only played like 0.67 over. Afternoon played 2.5 over par. This golf course got really hard when the winds kicked up. And because we're going to have wind for pretty much the entire day, I think regardless of when you're teeing off, you're going to see guys struggle. And oftentimes at majors, we like to fade some of the later starters because they're dealing with pressure, so on and so forth. This time, actually, I think the early starters are some of the better fades because you can see, and I guess I'll scroll this over here to the right so you can see the early forecast. 7 a.m. They're starting around 7 a.m. local time there. The winds are going to be gnarly. And you're talking about guys that have not been playing well this week and are also players that are out of form in a lot of cases and just lower tier players. So I think the best fades, the best props out there on Sunday are some overs on strokes for the slap dicks going off early. Now, that sentiment is obviously shared by PrizePicks, I guess, because I went out there, I faded, I think, like 8 props, and every single one of them bumped. Some of them bumped an entire stroke already. So what I did is I kind of held off from entering anything else so that we could at least find something over here on the live stream. So let's bring up that board. Let's bring up Underdog over here as well. What I'll say about the Underdog board is I actually agree with the Underdog board a little bit more. I took an over. Actually, let me see if they reposted them. If they did, we can get to them together here. I took an over on Scotty Scheffler at 3.5 birdies, and I also took an over on Xander Schauffele birdies. Now, when I took the Xander over, he was at a 1.1x multiplier over, so obviously we got a little bit of a boosted payout by taking him. And then Scotty Scheffler was at even money for the 3.5 birdies, so that's what I ended up going with. So if they repost Scotty by the time you're watching this on replay, you could enter that payout's going to be a little bit lower because of that multiplier. But right now, I also don't hate this Colin Morikawa over. So I'm probably going to get some exposure to this myself. Just for comparison, Morikawa is at 3.5 birdies over here on PrizePicks. And if we take a look at his Caesars line, he's even money at 3.5 birdies. So it's probably at least 0.5 too low. And with the birdie average at 2.88 per round today, I think the scoring average might be a little bit harder, right? Maybe the birdies go down slightly compared to what we had in round 3. But even if it's like a 2.5 birdie average, Morikawa is an elite tier birdie maker. So though the Scotty line got ripped off, you could play these two over here in Underdog. And for reference out there with Xander, right? Obviously the multiplier was better when I took it, but we do have a line posted for him over here on Draftkings, and he's minus 150 towards the over, which if you're a plus EV player is obviously a pretty solid lean right there. In terms of the stuff on PrizePicks, a lot has already moved, but there were a few props that I still was looking at before. So, for example, like a few of the guys I faded, a Ricky Fowler, I faded at 72 strokes. That bumped an entire stroke. McKibben, I faded. He was going off super early. Same thing with Ricky. McKibben was at 72.5. So a few of these have moved. And honestly, it's not even like I'd hate fading them at 73 strokes. It's just that I'm obviously not going to add more exposure myself when I've already got them at a slightly better number. So I guess I'll just throw out a few of them here. The one I also want to point out would be this Billy Horschel over. So on books, he's at 72.5. He is juiced a little bit under, but Billy Ho's going off late, right? He was just getting away with so much out there in round 3 that I can't imagine he does it for round 4. So this isn't a prop that I've entered myself yet, but kind of like this Morikawa one that I'll likely end up getting to. And it'll give us a chance to actually enter a slip here because they've bumped everything I've posted on my Patreon page. Just to give you guys that reference out there with the strokes line, Billy Horschel is at 72.5. Like I said, he is juiced minus 130 under. So, at him at 72, right? That's why I think it's fair to take him there for an over. And then I just disagree with the sportsbook line a little bit too, right? Given the ball striking metrics and whatnot, I could see him falling off there. In terms of another prop to take for an over, let's try and find something else to mix in. I was looking at this Matthew Jordan prop, but it did bump from 72 to 72.5. So maybe that one's not the best one. We could look at this Laurie Cantor over. That was something that I was considering a little bit before. And then who else could we possibly mix in? I was looking at this Thompson prop. Not sure if it's something I'm going to get exposure to. Let's see what else we've got on here. So Kitayama's at 72.5. That one was also a lean towards the over. So these would be like the main 3 at this point. If we're going to go through the odds, just to show you that, Laurie Cantor, I believe let's find the other cants. There we go. Laurie Cantor's minus 125 over. So not as much juice as some of the other props, but that one would still make sense. And then Davis Thompson's at 72.5. He is juiced under, but kind of like the Billy Horschel prop, even though he's juiced under, right? That's why I'll take him at 72, right? We have the 0.5 discrepancy, so I think it's okay to take that with the push equity. Now, this 3-man, the payout's not great, so I would probably take one out here. And if I was going to do so, I'd probably take out Davis Thompson, right? I'd run this Billy Ho, then the Laurie Cantor over, and that'll be the slip that we do over there on PrizePicks. Of course, for all my exposure as I'm dropping it, right? As you saw, like all the stuff I took has been bumped royally to this stage. To get it before that happens, check out the Patreon page. There's a link in the description of this video to that, which is where I post all the stat averages, give you guys my weather analysis out there for every single round, and of course, all the exposure that I'm getting to. So whether it's Underdog, PrizePicks props that I'm mixing in, et cetera, all that is posted on my Patreon page. For that, check out the prop tier. That's how you get access to all of those slips, all that analysis that I'm doing. And then for my player pool, all the DFS stuff that you saw when we were going through that spreadsheet, all of the fantasy stuff, that's the DFS tier. So it's $15 a month for either one. Combined tier, I do have a full golf tier where you get both of those out there for $25 a month. So it's obviously a little bit of a discount when you go out there and you take both of those together. But depending on what you're looking for golf content, I've got you covered out there. So again, there's going to be even more than I'm entering. Obviously, a lot of it has already moved, but as I get even more exposure here over the evening and during play tomorrow, that's where all that is going to be posted. And like I said, it's been 3 straight profitable days so far. So hopefully we can keep that going out there for Sunday. In terms of pick 6, that's where we're going to lead off with this video. I'll also see if there's any questions in chat. And yeah, if you have any prop questions, let me know right now, right? Because after we do this pick 6 talk, we're going to be hopping on out of here. So where were we at? Should you take Cantlay or Morikawa for under 3.5 birdies? I wouldn't take Morikawa under. I would, if anything, take Cantlay under. But even that, I'd be like 50-50 on. I do think conditions going to be tough, but the guys I like to fade, you probably noticed they were all like kind of slappies, right? I guess, you know, Billy Horschel wouldn't qualify as a slappy, but definitely not like the elite tier players. So yeah, I go Cantlay if you needed one, but I wouldn't go Morikawa, to be honest. Who would shock me winning more? Billy Ho, Henley, or Burns? Oh boy, that's a good question. Henley. Henley winning would shock me. Now, it's possible. Russell Henley, fantastic player. I'm not trying to talk shit, but the guy is a little bit of a head case. I think even he knows that, right? You get into contention, Russell Henley has had some wild stuff happen. I mean, 5-shot collapses. I think even a 6-shot collapse early in his career. So yeah, I'd be pretty shocked, honestly, if Henley went out there and won. Burns, not so much. Kid's a stud. Now, he's not really like a big game hunter. So, you know, I'd definitely be a little surprised there. Same thing with Billy Ho, a little surprised. But I'd be downright shocked if Russell Henley won. And again, I'm not trying to talk shit, but I just think that the track record of Burns in contention looks a lot better than what we have over there. And then even Billy Ho, right? Billy Ho's been a pretty decent closer. Not so much with Henley. And I think he'd be the first to admit that. In terms of what we're looking here at pick 6, we've got Morikawa and Cantlay at 3.5 birdies. Not my favorite. They only have this many props up. That's crazy. Let's see what else they've got up here, though. So, yeah, this board's utter dog shit, if I'm going to be complete honest with you. Yeah, I wouldn't even bet on pick 6. What, you have 2 birdie lines to choose from. Like, maybe they add more later. If they do, I guess that would make a lot more sense. But even these strokes lines, they're just, nothing really stands out. They're all very similar to where they are in other sites. And like, I'm not fading Scotty Scheffler. Like, I guess like the over would be value compared to other sites, but like, I'm not fading Scotty. Even guys like Xander at 70.5, like I think that's a pretty accurate line. I think 71.5 is the right number for Brooks Koepka too. So yeah, save your money on pick 6, guys. Unless they add more to the board and like they add more slappies that we can fade it like 72.5. It's in my opinion, just a little bit of a waste of time. So that's what I'll say about that. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for this live stream. Going to go ahead and hop on out of here now so I can head over to my buddy's house. But hopefully you feel a little bit more prepared to go out there, get to all of your Sunday exposure, and are ready to go out there and crush it to end this week strong. Go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already, and also subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content to come. Next week, we got 3M Open, also the Olympics the week after that. So a lot of big stuff coming from the golf sphere. Make sure to stay tuned for all of the content to come there, which will be showdown stuff out there for rounds 2 through 4, and all the main slate content that I'm posting over here in the YouTube. I appreciate all your support here. Like I was saying before, best of luck out there with your exposure, and let's get after it.